start with that. Let's do the names. Warrior.
All right, let's check. We have the warrior who's going to be named Bovril.
How do
Bovril.
Bovril?
Yes.
Okay. Thief.
Thief has not got a name sent for it.
I'll do BSG. Okay. Black Mage.
And the black mage will be named Zelda.
Zelda. Okay. And then I do want to ask you to repeat the white mage for me.
Clover.
Clover. Perfect. Before we can get started, a real quick question to my lovely person on audio. Could you turn down the donation reader for me? Killer chair is a little loud for me. Thank you. Anyway, with that out of the way, ready for the timer? All right. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. So, welcome everybody to Final Fantasy 1 for the PlayStation Portable. I'm going to focus for a few moments because this first bit is kind of the part where we do all the fun shenanigans. I'm going to buy a hammer. We're going to use that for some glitching. That glitching is going to get us a bunch of items. I'll explain how all of that works once we're actually through the glitch segment. But we're kind of starting off with a bit of a tricky portion here. Okay, that's 3, 4... Okay, perfect. So what I just did there is the equipment glitch, which you'll see a few times as we go through the run. It's what I use to get us a whole lot of money, a whole lot of items, make this run very, very free. So, before we actually get started, let me quickly introduce myself. Hello, I'm Crrool. I do a lot of speedrunning. Not as much anymore. I mainly ran Pokemon, but also a bunch of Final Fantasy and Lufia and Zelda and, you know, a bunch of other things. This is a run that I used to do a lot. The route that you'll be seeing today is a bit of an outdated route. There is a technically, on average, quite a bit faster route. Well, not quite a bit, but at least a little bit faster route. But the premise of both routes are going to be very much the same. What I just did is the equipment glitch. It is a glitch exclusive to the PSP version. This will not work in Pixel Remaster or really in any other version. And the way that it works is all of the weapons and armor in this game have an ID attached to them. Just a value that indicates in the menu, okay, this is the item that we're working with here. In our case, we bought a hammer, and what I did is I went into the menu and I switched between a weapon slot on a character and an armor slot on a different character on the frame that I load in the menu. What that does, it actually loads in the IDs for the wrong one. So I load in my weapon IDs on armor or my armor IDs on weapon. And we're going to use that to get some really powerful stuff early on. The first thing I got was the Knight's Armor, which is just something that's good, but mostly it's available early. Now we just got the Leather Cap, which I can use to glitch into the Judgment Staff, which is the most powerful staff in the game. It has the side effect of casting Flare, the most powerful black magic spell of the game. So by this point, we're kind of already quite strong. The Knight's Armor itself has one major drawback, and that it's going to kind of make it harder for us to run. Like, we don't take much damage, but we're also kind of struggling to run away. So we're going to improve that soon. But before that, we've got a few bosses to do, and this is our first one. This is Garland. We're going to just bop him on the head with our staffs. So I'm just going to select attack with everybody. I'm just going to sit here. And that's the first boss of the game. That was Garland. So this is a theme you'll kind of see throughout the run, where we have very powerful equipment very early on, which also means we don't really have to worry about beating an enemy. Like, it's really hard to die, and it's really hard for enemies to kill us, and we tend to be able to deal quite a lot of damage at once. But with some drawbacks here and there that, you know, in the case of the armor that we currently have, running is a little bit tricky. Anyway, we've saved the princess, and we're going to talk to her, and we're going to get the loot. She's going to call us back if we don't. In the NES version, you could actually just never pick this up, and you'd get stuck towards the end of the game. We don't really need that item until we're pretty much in the final dungeon, but we'll pick it up now, so we'll have it. And then we're going to get into a little cutscene where the bridge is going to get built. We need that bridge to cross into the next town. See, basically, long story short, the light of the crystals is kind of gone out. We are the 4 warriors of light, and we need to get the light of the 4 crystals to be able to stop this evil that's been corrupting the world. That's kind of all there is to it. The way we do that is a little bit of a more tricky situation. But long story short, essentially, I need to collect the 4 crystals. That'll open up the final dungeon, and that's where we can beat the final boss and save the world. Now, this bridge, you know, so one of the soldiers actually asks what this bridge has anything to do with all that. Well, you know, basically the guy just says, the Warriors of Light are here in Cornelia. That still doesn't actually answer the question, because they could have just given me a ship and they wouldn't have needed to rebuild the bridge, but so be it. Unfortunately, these people are not quite willing to give us a ship, so we're going to have to get one ourselves. But before that, we get a bit of lore, which we're going to skip, because this cutscene is skippable in PSP. And that saves like a minute. So we're off to our second town, where we're going to try to pick up a ship. See, the thing is, we can't actually get to any of the crystals right now. The crystals are all locked away in dungeons that are far out of reach for us. But you know, we can work our way to getting one of those crystals. And the first way we do that is by picking up a ship. We can then use that ship to go to the Elven Castle, where there is an elf who's currently in like he's like in an ongoing sleep. So we need to wake him up, for which we need the Joel Tonic, which we can get from Matoya the Witch. Matoya the Witch, however, has currently lost her eye, so she's blind, so she can't really help us until we find her eye, which is currently held by the evil dark elf Astos. So we need to beat Astos, but he doesn't act like he wants to become very powerful, so he's going to set us in, he's disguised himself as a king, and he's going to set us on a quest to get a crown. And in order to get that, we need a ship. So here are some pirates. And this is where we are going to use the secondary ability of the Judgment Staff. If I use the Judgment Staff as an item, it casts Flare. Like I said, the most powerful black magic spell in the game. The downside is the animation is quite long, but there we go. That's the second boss of the game. Those are the pirates. Nice thing is we get a bunch of levels here. We had not actually beaten any random encounters, so I hadn't really gotten any levels. So it's quite convenient that we pick up a few along the way here. And so we have obtained a ship. Now, here's the thing. Some tiles have, some areas have quite annoying encounters, such as the ship. Encounters at sea are quite rare. Like, you can travel quite long distances without seeing anything, but a lot of the encounters here are nearly impossible to run from at this point. So we really hope to just not see any encounters, which isn't uncommon. And we did not. Perfect. I don't even care that I got one almost immediately after. So we're not great at running away yet. Again, we haven't improved that equipment yet. We're going to be able to do that as soon as I have the Mystic Key, which takes us a little bit to get. I'm going to just go in and out. That way, you know, I skip a few tiles, but mostly I reset the encounter rate. Basically, every type of tile has, you know, an encounter rate, which is determined by how many steps has it been since your encounter, and the type of tile that you're on. So forest, for example, will generally yield more encounters than plains, which will yield more encounters than, for example, the sea. But because, you know, we go in and out of town, I reset that encounter rate back to 0. I'm going to also potion up to full here. We bought plenty of potions, so we don't really have to worry about that. We're going to continue our way to the Marsh Cave. The Marsh Cave is where the crown is at. That's where we're going to see our next enemy. We're going to get kind of a mini boss. I'll explain how that works when we get there. Now, I'm kind of hoping to find along the way a lone ogre, or maybe even 2. That'll generally be enough to get me like 1 extra level, which increases my agility a bit, which then increases my chance to run a bit. Most encounters aren't really worth it to do that with, but if I find a lone ogre, I could potentially go for that. They're just little things to increase the odds of running. So this would be a good example of that. This is a lone ogre. I just attack, just attack with everybody. It'll take 2 hits to go down, but this should, I believe, give me 1 extra level up. Just not. Okay, that's unfortunate. Oh well, not really a big deal. We're going to go into the Marsh Cave. This is where our next enemy is going to be at. The enemy is on the 3rd floor. Marsh Cave is another place with very, very few encounters, so it's not uncommon to go through the entire thing without any encounters at all. Now, the crown, the item that we're about to pick up, generally, if we're looking at a really good run, we're hoping to get that around the 10-minute mark. And we're actually, like, we're not quite on pace for that, but we're quite close to it, which means we've had a pretty okay early part. So it's the one alley to the right, and then the 3rd room, we should be able to pick this up. And this is, like, the enemy here, we won't see him. He's on what we call a spiked tile. A spiked tile is a tile that will always yield an encounter no matter what. So if I were to step off this tile without picking up the crown and then step back on it, we would get another one of these encounters, the Pisco Demons. Luckily, they get killed quite easily, and having 4 of them, again, a little bit of extra experience, which isn't a bad thing this early on in the game. So we kill them, we get some extra levels, and then we pick up the crown. Now, like I said, generally we're looking at about a 10-minute time for the crown, so this really isn't too bad. I am going to quickly heal up my Black Mage, I think. I'll just heal everyone. The way that my health on the Black Mage is really low. The way that health increases works is you either get the maximum or the minimum amount every time you level up. And so far we've gotten a little unlucky and gotten a lot of minimum rolls on the Black Mage. That doesn't have to be a problem, but if we keep getting that, it can be a little bit tricky towards the late game. So we do expect to get a few good health rolls along the way, just to make sure that the Black Mage doesn't just die towards the end. Okay, we're almost out of the Marsh Cave, and then we're going to make our way to Astos' castle. And this is where the first, like, somewhat bigger boss of the game is going to be. Astos is also a boss that is one of the only bosses I might not be able to kill in a single turn, as, or at least up to this point. So the strategy we use is we're going to use Flare with our mages and a physical attack with our warrior and thief, and that's usually enough to kill. However, he has a spell called Death, which is an instant death move that I do not currently have protection against yet. So if he uses that, he can just one-shot a character before it gets the chance to attack, and that might sometimes make this a 2-turn fight. We're going to just fight him. This is the Astos, and we give him the crown, and then, you know, he's like, oh, now I'm very powerful, and he's going to attack us. So the strategy, fairly straightforward. Attack, and then use 2 spells. He does use Death on the warrior. The warrior is not the worst to have Death on. It's more annoying if it's the mages, but it does mean that Astos is now a damage range, which will depend on if I get a high roll or a low roll, especially on the white mage. And it was a high roll, so we should get a kill here. Yeah, that's going to easily kill. We got high rolls there, so we are good. That's Astos. Now we've got some tracking around the world map to do. We're going to make our way all the way back to pretty much the start of the game, now that we have the Mystic Eye, to give that to Matoya to get the Jolt Tonic to wake up the Elven Prince. Before I do that, I'm going to quickly heal. We have Phoenix Downs. We bought a bunch of those at the start. I'll potion twice, and I'll potion the Black Mage since we finally got a good health roll on it, so that's nice. As we make our way there, I'm going to try to avoid the forest whenever I can and take plains tiles, but, you know, there's quite a lot of forest around here, so there's really not too much I can do. We're just gonna do our best here, make our way to the cave, and while we do, Killer Chair, I think now might be a good time to just talk about a bunch of things, because honestly, we have some walking around the world map to do.
All right, well, speaking of around the world, I could talk about other speedrun marathons that are going on, or will be going on around the world. Like, for instance, Indie-thon. It's a tri-annual marathon showing off the best of indie games. The next marathon coming up for that one is the 3rd of November. If you want more information on that, check out the website indiethon.com. Now, of course, we also have some friends over at UKSG, which is in the United Kingdom in Glasgow. The next one should be UKSG Blue 23, and that is going to run from the 23rd to the 24th of September this year. They'll be raising money for a crisis.
You have more time. I'm still not at Matoya.
Even more.
Yeah, even more.
Well,
I know,
in
right?
that case, we're just going to go talk about the charity that we're raising money for this event, which is MIND, a nationwide organization committed to prevent mental health issues. MIND strives to provide support to individuals and families facing mental health challenges. All of your donations will go to MIND.
So this is one of the sea encounters that I was talking about. The first one we got was the Buccaneers, and that was preemptive. Preemptive encounters are guaranteed to be to run from. Sahagins, unfortunately, is one of those encounters that right now I'm just having a really poor time running from. Okay, so this is a little awkward. This trip to the sea to Matoya has made this quite awkward. We've gotten a few encounters that are all kind of challenging to run from. They can be kind of annoying in the moves they do. So that's really slowed this sea trip down a bit. We do get a little extra level up on the warrior, which is nice, but really I should have already been at Matoya. But we're almost there. So we've pretty much sailed past the first castle, like the place that we started this game with, and I'm almost at Matoya, where we can pick up that Jolt Tonic. Now, right after I've gotten the Jolt Tonic is when we start seeing some major upgrades here. We're finally going to get a piece of equipment that is going to allow me to run much more easily from a lot of the encounters. So that's really nice. So yeah, this is Matoya. She's a witch, but she's been blinded because her eye has been stolen. So, you know, she bumps and stumbles around trying to find her eye. So, you know, we watch her do just that for a moment until we go to her and give her back her eye. And as a thank you, we get the Jolt Tonic. This tonic will wake anyone up, even if they're cursed. And the Elven Prince has been cursed with a sleeping spell, so... or something along those lines, at least. So we're now going to wake up the Prince. This will be our last trip around the world map I need to do before we get our option to just run much more easily. So in the meantime, let me quickly explain how we are going to go about that. Once we get the Mystic Key, we get access to some treasure rooms. And one of those treasure rooms is in the Elven Castle itself, which has the Mithril Hammer. Now, the Mithril Hammer can be equipped by the Warrior and the White Mage, and we're going to get that into... we're going to equip that through that into the Thieves' Armlets, which is an item that'll boost my agility. It'll still, because I'm able to equip 3 of them, it'll still boost more than enough to be able to... or boost my defenses more than enough to not worry about any of that. I should still have plenty of defense, but the added agility will make it so that at least we can run. Especially from encounters like this. One of the most nasty ways that you can get stuck is if every character is paralyzed, because then you can't even attempt to run or attack. This is why those Sahagin big eyes can be a real pain. And the problem is they don't even give any experience either. Well, some, but almost nothing. Okay. This is what we consider quite unlucky. That is the second Sahagin Big Eye encounter. It's an ambush, so they get to attack first. Okay, at least that wasn't on the White Mage. If both mages would have gotten paralyzed, we would have been stuck here for another turn. Why was that a potion? That was supposed to be the Judgment Staff. Okay, don't know why that was a thing. Unfortunately, the sea has been quite rough this time around. And this is kind of the thing with Final Fantasy 1. The run itself is incredibly safe. Like, there really isn't a lot of things that can kill you, but there are some encounters that are just really good at slowing you down. So while we had a really solid first section, and we had quite a good time for picking up the crown, the Mystic Key, not so much. But yeah, we hand over the Jolt Tonic to the elf here, and he's going to wake up the Elven Prince, and that gets us the Mystic Key. At least at this point in the game, things start to open up a little bit more. So we are closing in on the first dungeon with an actual crystal in it. But here's the thing. The ocean that we're currently in is surrounded by land. Like, there's no path into the bigger oceans of the world. However, there are some dwarves who are trying to make a canal to allow us to actually access the rest of the map. And okay, I need to pay attention because I got the longsword, which is an enemy drop that you don't normally see. Hello, Thieves' Armlets, thank you. I should mention this is a frame perfect trick, but you can just try over and over until you get it. It's really not that hard to do. Come on, Thieves' Armlet. And there we go. Okay, a little bit slow, but we got it in the end. But yeah, some dwarves are trying to build a canal to allow us the access to the rest of the world. The problem is that this canal is, they need some dynamite, some explosives to be able to make that work. And they don't currently have any. We're going to go pick that up. Because you see, those explosives, they've been in a town that we've been in already. And, we saved the princess there, but they still didn't want to give that to us, which would have probably saved quite a bit of time. Unfortunately, they had us do this entire trip before we were allowed access into the treasure room, or really, until we could sneak into the treasure room. But back at the very first town of the game, we can now go into the treasure room and we can pick up these explosives and get that canal build. Now, there's one other stop that I'm still going to make after we've got that canal before we go into the dungeon with the first crystal of the game, the nitro powder. This is that explosive. Because there is one more upgrade I want to make, the weapon. Right now, we still have the Judgment Staff, which, while it's the most powerful staff in the game, it's still a staff, and staffs don't tend to be that good when you try to kill enemies. They're good for spells, and we have Flare, which is really powerful, but that isn't going to get me through the game fast. The animation is like 8 seconds, so it just drags on too much. Instead, I'm going to go get a piece of armor that's going to allow me to get the Barbarian Sword. Barbarian Sword is by far the most powerful in the game, the most powerful sword in the game. And just as a little bit of a reference point, you may have heard of such weapons like Excalibur. Well, if you have, imagine Excalibur, but then 3 times more powerful and giving you a strength boost of 15. It is normally locked in one of the by the hardest boss in the hardest bonus dungeon in the game, which is not an easy thing to beat. But the equipment ID happens to be the same as one of the gloves that we can pick up in the next town. So we can equipment glitch that. Now, additionally, normally it would only be equipable by the warrior. But because, we have the equipment glitch, we're going to just equip everybody with one of those barbarian swords. So everybody will be dealing damage as if they are 20 levels higher than they are, and as if they're all warriors, even though I'm using like mages and whatnot. So here we have the explosives going off. We get that canal build. We're once again going to skip the cutscene here. And now we have a path into the rest of the map. We can now access the entire sea. Simple as that. We can go everywhere. However, there are still some blocks here and there. There are some areas that are locked by either the airship or the canoe. I cannot pick up the canoe until I have the first crystal. That's a requirement. And then I cannot get the airship until I have the canoe. So we're going to have to go do that first crystal first. And after that, we can kind of determine the order however we want. We can kind of do that whichever way we choose. So I'm going to make my way to that town. I'm going to go pick up those gloves, and we're going to get some really, really powerful swords on everybody. And I guess while we do, I can briefly explain why we choose the classes we do. So you might have seen already, I've got quite a diverse class of characters. I've got a warrior, I've got a thief, a black mage, and a white mage. And every single one of these actually serves a very specific purpose on the team. Let me start with a thief, because that's probably the least intuitive, but the thief is actually the highest damage class in the game if you're not limited by equipment. Normally, the Thief is quite limited by equipment, making it not that good, but because it has the highest agility in the game, it actually allows me to, if I can do any equipment at all, to deal the most damage, because it gets the most hits. And since we can glitch the sword, it'll be my highest damage per turn character. So these are the barbarian swords that I was talking about. I'm going to quickly do that. The warrior can just equip it naturally. We're going to quickly swap the two mages around so I can do the glitch again. There we go. And now we have the most powerful swords on everybody. So that's the Thief. The warrior is there specifically because of the equipment glitch. This is quite a normal audio glitch, by the way. Don't worry about that. That happens all the time, especially in this area. So the warrior is able to equip the most variety of equipment of any character in the game. Okay, we're going to make a safety save here. We haven't actually done any safety saves yet. Anyway, as I was trying to say, the warrior can equip the most different types of equipment, and by extension, it can use the equipment glitch the most of any other character. So really, we just use it for equipping everybody else. The white mage, quite obvious, is for healing. We don't actually need much healing, but we do need a bit of healing on the final boss. So really, the white mage is just there for the final boss. And then the black mage really is only used specifically for 2 dungeons, but it gets the spell Teleport, starting level 19. And Teleport allows you to go back 1 floor in a dungeon. And there is 2 dungeons where that is incredibly useful. Specifically in the Sunken Shrine, which saves me walking back 2 floors, and then in the Waterfall Cave, which saves me walking out completely. Both White Mage and Black Mage, until those points, are quite good at dealing damage as well because of just the powerful equipment they have, but really, we would have liked more thieves if we could. But the others all serve a purpose that we can't really work around otherwise. So this is the next boss. This is the vampire. Let me demonstrate how good those swords are, right? So I'm going to select attack for everybody. And that was the boss. This is how good the barbarian sword is. It doesn't even take more than 1 hit to go down anymore. So we get the Star Ruby here. Unfortunately, there's a stone blocking our path, or like a tablet blocking our path a little further down the line. So I actually need to head back out. There is a way that we can skip this, but it is, on average, not worth it to do. If you're going for like record times, it very much is. If you have the ship, there is a 15 puzzle mini game, which is to say, if you do a specific combination of buttons, you can unlock a little mini game that, it's a little puzzle, and if you solve it between 30 seconds and a minute, so ideally, at 31 seconds, or like 30 and a half seconds or something, you have a 1 in 6 chance of getting the emergency exit, which is an item that will immediately allow you to go out of any dungeon. On average, a walk out of this dungeon takes a minute and a half. So getting the emergency exit, as that takes about 30 seconds, saves on average a minute. However, because it's a 1 in 6 to get, 1 in 6, and it takes 30 seconds per try, generally speaking, you don't go for that in a marathon setting, because on average, you just don't get it, and then you lose time. Because every time you get something else, like the other items are not useful and are not going to make up that time difference at all. So you either lose 30 seconds or you save a minute, on average, and that's just kind of how it is. That's a strat not used all that often. Even for the longest time, even in record runs, that was not something that you needed to go for. I don't know if the current record uses it. It might, but until, like, you can get really good times, like top 10 times, without having to do that. But yeah, we needed the Star Ruby to get this to this giant who loves to eat rubies. And now the giant is going to go away, and that unlocks a path to somebody who's going to give us the earth staff, something like that, earth rod. I don't remember. which is going to allow us to get deeper into the previous dungeon. That previous dungeon, by the way, is where the first crystal is. So we need to go for that. So just as a little time reference, generally speaking, for this particular item, this is one of the times that we tend to look for. If we're going for like a decent time, we're looking at it under 30 minutes. And it looks like we do end up getting that. So we've made up a bit of time on this last section. That was quite a good section. So here we go. We get the item, the Earth Rod, and with that we can now go for the first crystal, and with that the first major boss of the game. And actually one of the scariest bosses in the game. This is actually one of the bosses that can kill runs, and one of the reasons we do safety save. You'll see a few points in the run where I will be making safety saves. Generally that's because there are enemies in the neighborhood that can actually either paralock me or just flat out kill my entire party. For the Cavern of Earth that we were in just now, specifically, it's the cockatrice, which has the ability to petrify a party member on hit, which is just considered to be an instant death, and if all four of them get petrified, game over. There are ghouls and ghasts, which can paralock as well. So really, there's just some nasty encounters, and they're quite common here, so we tend to save. And then I will save before this next boss, because it's either going to be really, really easy, and you're going to be like, why was that save even necessary? Or we're going to die. And there's kind of not much in between. Although, as I say that, my white mage health isn't too bad, so I might be able to clutch out a win with the white mage if that does happen. I don't want to bank on it, but it is not theoretically impossible. See, the thing is, I kind of need to keep my health a little low for a time save later on. Once we get into the Cavern of Ice, which is the dungeon after this one, there is going to be an enemy that I actually want some of my party members to die on for grinding purposes. This is a little annoying. Because it's a 7 encounter ambush, we're going to have to sit through 7 attacks before I even get a chance to run. But yeah, the next dungeon, there's an encounter where I want some of my party members to die on. So I'm actually kind of purposefully keeping my health somewhat low, so that if it does come to that, I can at least die quickly and not have to spend a bunch of time trying to. Oh, that's not the right item. Where is it? There. So I can have those characters die quickly and not have to deal with walking around a bunch, trying to take some extra damage, because that tends to be quite slow. And generally the way we do that is we heal to full just around Marsh Cave, and then we generally just don't really heal much anymore. It makes this one upcoming fight a bit scary, but everything else becomes quite a bit easier because of that, and it'll actually, on average, save quite a bit of time. The Pisco Demons, the reason I'm killing these instead of running away from them is this is one of the first unrunnable encounters in the game. There's a handful of encounters in the game that are flagged as unrunnable, meaning that no matter how much I were to try, no matter my stats, no matter any of that, I am never going to be able to run from them. It's just impossible. The Pisco Demons, seeing as how it's a mini-boss earlier on, is one such example of a boss that is, of an encounter that is unrunnable. So it is impossible for me to get away, even if I tried. Generally speaking, I know the list of encounters that are unrunnable. So we can, whenever I see that, I know that I will have to kill them. So if you see me kill an encounter, oftentimes that might be the reason why. Luckily, we have access to Flare. In the other route that I mentioned, the slightly more optimal route on average, you actually have another weapon here that you go out of your way for to glitch that. That has a faster animation than Flare. That's one of the places where some optimizations come into play. Which, you might never need it, but it's nice to have. And it has 2 different weapons I think it picks up along the way to deal with encounters like that. I'm just gonna... Okay, the troll is not wanting to let me run, so I'll just kill it since it's just the one of them anyway. The boss is on floor 5. That's where I gotta get to. We're getting quite a few encounters. So these are the wights and ghasts. That's not a problem. Or not that many. Those can be annoying if there's a lot of them, because, you know, they do have the chance to paralyze me upon every hit. But we did save like one floor before this, so I should be okay. Wraiths, I'm actually going to go for a bit of an interesting option here. I'm going to attempt to run with 2 of my characters. These are runnable, but Wraiths at this point in the game are quite hard to run from. We can run, but it's quite likely that you don't, and they have the option to paralyze upon hit. So generally speaking, it might just be worth killing them, especially in a marathon setting. It's only 2 of them this time. Just for the sake of consistency, we'll just kill these. Once we have another equipment upgrade, which is actually coming up relatively soon, that'll be in the next town, then I would actually have tried to run from them, because the next upgrade is going to give me another significant increase on my run chances. So I wouldn't be nearly as worried. So here's the first of the major bosses in the game. The first crystal. We are only level 11, so we're not that high level, and I'm not going to heal any of my characters. Maybe I should have healed my white mage. Like I said, this is one of those fights where either, like, he might not even get an attack off, honestly. Like, either nothing's going to happen and it's going to look completely free, or, you know, he might troll me and we're going to be stuck here for a little bit. Let's see what happens. It's a good hit. This is the move that kills me. Yep. That's how you can just lose. This is why we saved. So yeah, that's a little bit of an unfortunate... This time I'll heal the white mage. The white mage would have actually survived on 12 HP had I done that. Well, that's karma for you. And it's just to show off why this boss can be a bit of a pain and why we save here. It's not a problem at all. So a death here loses like 30 to 40 seconds, I think. It sucks, but honestly, it's fine. And that's the boss. This is the first major boss of the game. So 1 crystal down, 3 more to go. And we've already done quite a bit of the side questing. We're making decent time. Honestly, a 36 for this boss is like a very average run. So I'm taking that. So we get a bit of a cutscene here. It's about 45 seconds. We're going to see the first bonus dungeon unlocked. Starting in, I believe, the GBA version, every crystal that you would unlock would also unlock a bonus dungeon. This one is Earthgift Shrine. The bonus dungeons contain enemies from other Final Fantasy games. So in this one, you'd have to fight the Dark Crystal Fiends from Final Fantasy III. And then you have the Elemental Fiends from Final Fantasy IV in the Fire Dungeon. And then you have some bosses from Final Fantasy V in the Water Dungeon. And some from Final Fantasy VI in the Wind Dungeon. So we see those unlocked, but we're never going to go in that in this run. There is, however, another category called All Bosses, where it's this plus all of the bonus dungeons, or at least all of the bosses in the bonus dungeons. And that would have actually gone into all of those bonus dungeons, sometimes more than once. Earthgift you'd have to do 4 times, but it's only like a 5-floor dungeon. It's not that bad. And you try to kill every single boss along the way. It's a really fun additional category that does all of the bonus content. But it's also a much harder run because the bonus dungeons, like the floor order is random, and a lot of the floors have random spawn points as well. So it requires a lot of being able to immediately recognize what floor you're on, and then what direction you need to go to the end, and then, you know, like what floor, what spawn, and then how do I get to the end fast. And that makes that for a really tricky run. That's actually, personally, I find it a lot more interesting than just any percent. But it also requires a lot more, and it's like a 4-hour run, so it's quite a bit longer than this too. Anyway, we're coming up on the next town. This is the Crescent Lake, named after the fact that the lake is in the shape of a crescent. We're going to be picking up a few items here. I'm going to get some elixirs, or no, ethers. Ethers are items that will heal my magic, my MP, which is going to be relevant mainly late in the game. Like, we're not going to really need them for a while because we don't really have any spells yet. You need to buy the spells, and I have not bought any of them so far, and it'll be a little bit before we actually will. But yeah, we pick that up. We're going to be getting another upgrade to our equipment, at least on some of the characters, though this time not quite all of the characters. And then this is the place where we can get the canoe, which is an item that'll let us go across shallow water. That poison might actually be a really good poison. Okay, I'm going to leave the thief poisoned for a little bit because I actually kind of needed him to take a little more damage. So don't worry about the damage that we're taking along the way here. That's completely fine because I kind of needed him to be around like 70 health, maybe even a little lower. That'll do. Yeah, that'll do. So this can only be equipped by the warrior, so I'm only going to use that on my black mage and my my thief, the black garbs. I could actually, for the sake of marathon safety, let's do this as well. Let's do the white mage too. So this will give everybody a better chance to run, except for the warrior. The warrior's, if I can actually get it, the warrior's stats are not going to be increasing because I can't glitch it from anyone else to the warrior. But at least it's a run increase for everybody else. And then here there's a circle of sages, and this guy is going to, he sees that we have the earth crystal, so he's going to give us the canoe. Now, the idea with the game now is that I take the canoe to go to Mount Gulg, which is where the fire crystal is going to be. However, we don't actually have to do that, and I'm actually going to hold off on doing that for a while now. See, this is kind of the point in the game where the map opens up a lot, and we can kind of just decide to not follow the route that the game intends me to do. I could go to that dungeon, but I could also go pick up the stone that's going to unlock the airship for us. Or I could go to the Citadel of Trials, where I can get the rat's tail, which I need for a class upgrade. But I can't actually get the class upgrade until I have the airship, so we're going to go for the airship next. And with that, we're going to come up on the Cavern of Ice, which is, I would consider, the hardest dungeon in the game, at least from an any percent speedrunning perspective. So hear me out on this dungeon. This dungeon has a number of encounters that can just decide to just make your life miserable. It has a 1 in 64, the White Dragon, which has a move that would pretty much one-shot my entire party. There is a 3 in 64, Dark Wizard, which has a move that would pretty much one-shot my entire party. There are Pisco Demons, which are unrunnable. There are Knights, Wights, Ghouls, Ghasts, and the likes, who can all paralyze me. And there is the cockatrices that I talked about earlier, which can petrify me. So there is about, like, pretty much, like, more than half of the encounters can screw me over one way or another. And there's the first one. This one isn't too bad because, you know, it just slows me down. Which, yeah, that's annoying. I'm also gonna have to redo the entire menu because I had to reload the save. Pisco Demons is probably fine. That's like, yeah, it'll lose me a bit of time, but it's one of the least bad ones here because at least we can defeat them. But you'll see me save a few times across the dungeon because there's just too many things that can mess with me. These are the specters. This is that instance of, like, I can kill them, I can run. It's kind of, like, tricky what the better option is here. I'll queue up 2 judgment staffs so that at least we have the opportunity to just kill them. Now, if I were to be attempting to go for a good time, I would have just attempted to run there. But for the sake of marathon safety, we're just going to not do that right now. It also gets me a bit of extra experience, which is nice. There's not as many this time, so I'm just going to take the risk, I think. So this is what I mean with sometimes you just cannot run, and there's not much you can do about that. Okay. I'm going to queue up 1 judgment staff with the white mage, because that does not look good. Okay, 1 more floor, and then I'm going to make another safety save just before another spiked tile. This is the Mind Flayers. Mind Flayers, I didn't even mention these. These can paralyze with Mind Blast. And additionally, if that wasn't bad enough, they can also just kill you upon hit. every time they attack you, they have a chance to just kill you instantly. And you saw that with the Mind Blast there. Like, it already hit 3 of my 4 characters. If it hits all 4, you're just stuck. There's just nothing you can do there. So I'm going to save here again. The tile below it is always going to yield an encounter with, like, ghouls and ghasts and specters and, like, nasty stuff. I'm going to attempt to run. I have saved literally the tile before, so if we get stuck in paralysis, it's not as bad. There we go. These spiky tiles, every time I take a step on them, I will take 1 point of damage. And that can actually that's not always a bad thing, because those spiky tiles, and you'll see that later with lava tiles as well, despite them always, like, you're taking damage as you walk through them, but at the same time, it is impossible to get an encounter. Like, there is no encounter checks on them. So while you have a chance of, you know, while you take some damage guaranteed, at the same time, you're also guaranteed. This is not great. Okay, we run. Actually, okay. A little bit of a slightly risky strat, but we're going to go for it. So one of my characters is paralyzed, petrified right now. I actually kind of want him to not be alive for this next section. The downside of that is I'm running with 1 fewer character now, and that can be a little risky. So I'm going to just do this. See, the mages need to hit a certain level before they can learn certain spells. And I want them to learn the white magic spell Hilara, which I need for the final boss. And then the black magic spells Haste and Teleport. But the other characters, the non-mages, if you will, they don't need those levels, and the experience gets spread depending on how many characters are alive. So by doing this way, I can actually, now I'm going to have to defend. This is the enemy I'm going to grind against. We get the Thundara, and now I'm going to just attack with the white mage. And the thief is not going to get experience because he's petrified, so that's convenient. All right, this is the Levy Stone. The Levy Stone is what we need in order to get an airship. But before we go there, I'm going to grind a bit. Now, don't worry too much. Final Fantasy 1, there's not that much grinding to be done, but we do, you know, it is an RPG. We do need to grind a little bit. So I guess while we're grinding, Killer Chair, if you want to say a few words, go ahead.
Of course, you can always tell people about, well, who we are and what we're doing. We are the Benelux Speedrunner Gathering, a dedicated organization focusing on hosting marathons within the Benelux region. Currently, we are excited to be live streaming our annual event from Hotel Asteria in Van Rij, the Netherlands. And, you know, if you want to stay up to date with all the stuff that we do, you can go and follow us on the website formerly known as Twitter and Instagram under the handle BSG Marathon. Get a behind-the-scenes look at the event to stay up to date with the latest on all of our marathons, events, and more. We're also in the process of uploading all the VODs to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/BSG Marathon.
Perfect timing. This is the last one I need to defeat, and then I'm done grinding. So, very well timed. So the Evil Eye, we go to level 18, and then we do one more. I need level 19 overall before I have enough, but we still have another dungeon to do, so we will get a little more experience as we're on our way. Now I can actually heal everyone to full. I'm going to save the game once again. This is all of the grinding we need to do for the entire run. That was about 1.5 minutes for reference. That's kind of one of the things that I really like about this run. You know, it's despite the like RPGs like this tend to be quite well known for, you know, being grind heavy and, you know, you need your levels and whatnot. This run consists of about 1.5 minutes of grinding, and that's it. And we're out. Decent Cavern of Ice. We got screwed over a little bit by some of the encounters, but we made it work. It is now time for us to go pick up the airship. Again, the game wants me to get the fire crystal, but I can't be bothered to. Not yet, at least. And then once you actually get the airship, like there is a route that does the fire crystal pretty much just before going into the final dungeon, like it's going to leave it all the way at the end. I'm going to not do that, but I will do a few other things first. I mentioned earlier that if I want to get the class change, I need to go into the Citadel of Trials, get the Rat's Tail, and that'll unlock the class change, but I need an airship to get it. Now I'm going to be able to get the airship, I can do that and get that class upgrade. The reason we want that is, number one, it gets us some extra spells to work with. It just, you know, it boosts our stats. Specifically, like the biggest one is it actually is what unlocks us using teleport. You know, that spell that was going to, that was the very reason we even had a Black Mage with us in the first place. So we do want to get on that soon. And then additionally, you know, there's just a stat increase across the board, little things like that. The dungeon is optional. Like it is for when I started running this game back in like, God, what was it, 2015 or something? We actually did not even do this dungeon. But the amount of benefits you get from this dungeon outweigh the amount of time you need to spend to do it. So it's actually optimal, despite it being a complete, like an entire extra dungeon. It's still faster to do that because on average it'll save more time back than it would cost to even do the entire thing. So this is going to be the only optional dungeon that we're going to do across the entire run. I'm going to park my airship right here. I'm going to save. You really shouldn't need it here. There are, I think, 3 recorded deaths to my knowledge in this area by this specific encounter, the Sandworm. The Sandworm can ambush you, and it has a move called Earthquake, which is which is an instant death move on potentially the entire party. If you get ambushed by sandworms, and then it uses Earthquake, and then that happens to hit everyone in your party, then you just die. That's it. You run over. Not much else you can do. So that's I think there's like 3 recorded instances that I'm aware of this actually happening. It is quite rare. It's probably like the least relevant save that I've done this entire run. Because that's probably the rarest place for me to have died. But there are a few situations, and like we're in a marathon, and saving doesn't take that much time anyway, so I might as well. So this is the Citadel of Trials. Originally, you needed to have the crown to be able to go in here. Obviously, you know, it's a required item. Yes, we have the crown. So moving on. And this is your, you know, every good RPG has a teleporter maze. So this is going to be our teleporter maze. And I'm going to teach you a real little quick trick to always know which teleporter is the next one. It's always the bottom one. Like from top to bottom of the screen, always take the lower one, and then you've always got the correct one. So the Minotaur Zombie, that's another unrunnable one. We do need to defeat that. And there's the level ups on the mages. Like I said, we were bound to get that at some point. Now, what I haven't mentioned is the Citadel of Trials, like I said, it saves more time than it loses. But I haven't really mentioned the reason, because kind of the class change kind of isn't really the reason why this dungeon saves us so much time. There is another item coming up called the I think it's the Healing Staff, something. No, it might not be the Healing Staff. Well, you'll see it in a moment. But the point is, it's an item that'll actually glitch into the Lordly Robes. And the Lordly Robes is an equip... Oh, come on, seriously? It's an equipment item that will boost my intelligence. And as such, Hilara will actually heal me for enough. I can hopefully showcase this in a moment. Hold on. There we go. This is a spike tile. Like, this encounter was always going to happen. These are really hard to run from, so I don't mind killing these. The Horned Devils we were fighting just now, those were just trolling. That's just unlucky. We don't care about blind. Doesn't really matter. We still hit for more than enough. Yeah, the item on my right here, this one, the Healing Staff, yeah. So the Healing Staff turns into the Lordly Robe if you use the equipment glitch. And I think it gives like a 20-point boost to intelligence. And because of that, I can heal enough on the final boss using the spell Healara. Before that, before we used to do this dungeon, we wouldn't have that item, and we'd actually use Healaga instead. The thing is, in order to get Healaga, like for the White Mage to learn Healaga, she needs to be level 33. And, you know, that's about 8 extra minutes of grinding. So this dungeon saves not only the advantages of the class change, it also saves like 8 minutes of grinding. So this is the last spike tile. This is the boss of the dungeon, the dragon zombie. They have a chance of dropping a mega elixir, which is nice to have. Like, it can help me out in a tough spot, but it's fine if we don't get it. So that was the bonus dungeon, or the optional dungeon. It's not really a bonus dungeon, the optional dungeon in the game. We're going to make our way back to the airship. We're going to get our class change, and then I think we're finally going to do what the game has been wanting me to do for a while, which is the fire dungeon. I think we've had the game wait long enough for us at this point. So we're going to have to cross through this desert one more time. Like I said, like the chances of dying here are so slim that I'm not going to save a second time for it. I think we've done our due diligence. Last encounter, and then we're at the airship. Desert Beretta. Okay, we're fine. So, here we go. We passed the Citadel. I'm gonna go get our class change first. Let's start with that. Oh gosh, this one, I believe. Yes, okay. It has been a little while since I ran this, so I wasn't entirely sure. The other one is Hellfire Chasm, which we don't want to go to yet. Or at all. At the top of the dungeon here, there is the Dragon Bahamut. And Bahamut is going to give us the class change. Our warrior is now going to turn into a knight, our thief into a ninja, and then our mages are going to become wizards. And that comes with a whole host of little upgrades. So for example, the thief can now actually get pretty decent equipment, and can use low-level black magic, though we're not going to use that. In all bosses, it's actually used. You use haste with the ninjas. Our warrior can learn some white magic. Again, we're not going to use that. And then our wizards can learn more spells and, you know, just the overall stat improvements, you know, little things like that. So from here, we're going to make our way south, and I'm going to pick up some spells. We had not actually bought... this way. We had not actually bought any spells yet, but we have leveled up enough so that I can actually go to Melmond to buy some. We're going to first buy Healara for our White Mage, now that we have some actual healing. And then we're going to get Teleport for our Black Wizard. Remember the Elven Town? Yeah, we weren't there for very long, but we're going to go back there to buy yet another spell. So, you know, now that we have the levels, we can get the spells, and this spell is going to be Haste. Haste in this game doesn't actually increase the amount of attacks you get to do, but rather the amount of hits you deal per attack. There's a maximum of 32 hits you can deal in a single round, and the more you do, the more damage you do. And Haste essentially doubles it, so essentially using just one Haste spell doubles the amount of damage you deal per turn. Very, very useful. I'm going to use this opportunity to heal. So this is the fire dungeon. This is where we are going to be getting our second crystal of the day, the fire crystal. Now, Mount Gulg is kind of a fun dungeon to do. It's honestly one of my favorite dungeons. Just like before with the spiky tiles, we now have lava tiles, and every time I step onto a lava tile, there is not an encounter. There cannot be an encounter. As such, you know, optimal movement really rewards you in this dungeon, because every time you can move around the normal land tiles, like for every land tile you skip an encounter check, and every encounter check you skip, you know, that's one fewer time loss. The downside is, you know, you do lose quite a bit of health, but we just picked up Healara, so I can just heal whenever I need to. It's because of all that, it is on average you get like 1 to 2 encounters in this entire dungeon, which is by far the lowest of any in the game, tied pretty much only by Marsh Cave. Marsh Cave is at about that level. So this is the second major boss of the game. This is Merilith, the Fire Crystal boss. It is in theory possible to one-shot the boss if you got like a high level or a bit higher level ninja. I've seen it happen in all bosses where the ninja is like level 20 something. Like a crit will actually one-shot Merilith. But yeah, she does not have that much health. Few hits, very quick kill. Didn't even get a chance to attack, and that's our second crystal. Now, if we're looking at time generally for the Fire Crystal, we want to be, for an average run, we want to be below an hour. We are below an hour. For a good run, you want to pick up the next item that we're going to pick up in the Sunken Shrine in an hour. So, like, this is still quite average. We're managing. Yeah, 2 crystals down, 2 more to go. And for the things that are going to speed up more from here, we've now pretty much done almost every side quest that we need to do in the game. There are still a few small ones left, but we've definitely done all of the major side stuff that we needed to do. And we can kind of just make our way to the next dungeon rather quickly. We're going to go for the water crystal next. That is actually the intended next crystal. Okay. Before that, you know, it's a sunken shrine, so it's underwater. So we need to figure out a way to breathe underwater. We're going to get that done first, but that's really, really quick to do. We fly over here. We then go a little bit to the right. And then there is a hidden market desert. Or a hidden desert market, I should say, up here. And what we want to buy is we want to go in here and buy the Fairy's Bottle. I'm also going to buy some Giant's Tonics. The Giant's Tonics is an item that will grant me 200 extra HP, max HP, not current HP, for the remainder of that fight. This is how we can kind of mitigate not getting really good health increases, since we are not going to be very high level. I'm going to use that to, on the final boss in the game, increase my health to a point where he isn't able to one-shot me anymore. But yeah, now we just, you know, we go here, the fairy escapes from the bottle, or rather we open up the bottle and we let the fairy out. And we're going to go talk to the fairy, and she's going to give us the Oxy Ale, which is an item that will allow us to breathe underwater. And this is the only thing I needed to do before I could go into the next dungeon. So we're going to do just that. All right, we have the Oxy Ale, which means we can now go into the water dungeon. The way we're going to do that, though, I'm going to teleport my way out so that my menu cursor is just set to teleport. Because this next dungeon is one of the places where you are going to be using this spell to speed things up a little bit. So on the right here, we just kind of fly over the entire desert. Unfortunately, we can only land on plains tiles. So we do still have to do some traveling around. Again, I'm going to just try and avoid forests as much as I can. There are some unrunnables in this forest as well. It's a really quick encounter. It's okay. Go around, and then right here is the next town, Onrak. This is where we have access to the water dungeon. But we're not actually just immediately going to go for the boss in this dungeon. We are like going to not. We don't have to double dip this dungeon. It's not like the Earth Cave. But yeah, she asks us to save the mermaids, and before we actually do that, and before we beat the boss, there is an item I need to pick up. Now, this item is always a really good indicator of what kind of time we're looking at for this run, because it's that item plus about half an hour is, generally speaking, about the time that you can expect to get. So it'll be a good indicator of what we're looking at. It's probably like a 1:35 pace right now, which is not terrible. Okay, so we're gonna go to the top floor of the Sunken Shrine. This place has a lot of unrunnable encounters. There's just, unfortunately, not much else to say than that. This place just does have a lot of unrunnables. It is also the place where we're going to pick up not quite the last bit of our equipment, but it's pretty much the last bit of our equipment. There's one more item in the next dungeon, and then we're pretty much set on equipment. But yeah, like I said, unfortunately, quite a lot of unrunnables here. And, you know, every unrunnable we get, we lose a little bit of time here, which is unfortunate, but there is just not that much I can do. This is another thing that the newer route accounts for more. It just has faster ways of dealing with unrunnable encounters. Faster methods than I currently have, faster methods than the Judgment Staff. Okay, that was our third unrunnable encounter already. Okay, sea snakes we can run from. So 3 unrunnable encounters so far. That's quite bad, but you know, that's just how the RNG is going to be. I'm going to go pick up the stone over here. Let me do just that. So this is the Rosetta Stone. Like I said, this is about a half hour before the end. The Rosetta Stone allows us to learn a new language very quickly. It's like from ancient Egyptian folklore, I think, something like that. I can now teleport back 2 floors, and this is the main reason we wanted that Black Mage. It saves us walking back those 2 floors. And then we can now go to the other side of the dungeon to go beat the boss. And while we do that, Killer Chair, if you want to talk about anything, now might be a good time.
Yes, I figured I would like to remind people of a bonus run we have somewhere tomorrow, Kaizo Rayman. We are still quite a ways off of reaching that goal of 2,000 euros. There's a whole bunch of really cool incentives you can put your money toward. It's all going to a great charity. I say, look around, pick something nice. We've got some bid wars for the next run. I believe we still have a good ending versus bad ending for Hogwarts Legacy. So if you want to put some money towards that, that would be great. And while I still have the mic, let's just quickly mention another small community event that BSG likes to host on our own channel, the Colin McRae-a-thon. Lots of racing games and such over on twitch.tv/BSG Marathon. So make sure you got that channel followed, as well as ESA's channel, which we're also on right now. Drop that follow.
So we're now on floor 2F. This is where the light axe is. I purposely went around the light axe because, you know, the tiles around it are spiked, except for this one. Yep, Lordly Robes. So these are the Lordly Robes that I was talking about, which give us a bunch of healing abilities. Okay, we equip, and we just equip a bunch of survival vests on everybody else. The survival vests are basically like the Thieves' Armlets, but much better. So armor-wise, this is pretty much the end. We are going to still equip something on the shield, but we can't really do that yet. So you might have noticed, so far in the entire run, I've never equipped anything on the shield slot. And that's because most pieces of equipment on the shield slot would actually crash the game as it tries to pull up the shield animation. So basically, like in a battle, I would try and block an attack, but then it doesn't recognize how to block the attack because, you know, there's no animation for it. And that kind of messes things up. So, you know, we can't just equip anything and everything in that slot. Instead, we are going to equip one very specific item in that slot in a little bit. Again, this is a sound glitch that sometimes happens. Fun fact, it can actually, in theory, happen that the sound then does not come back. We've seen this happen on like a handful of runs. There's no consistent way that we know of to trigger it, but it would actually save time because it actually speeds up certain animations. Like it saves like 20 seconds if the glitch does happen, but we have no way of triggering it. It just randomly occasionally pops up and usually fixes itself before it becomes useful. Yeah, as I was saying about that shield, there is actually some pieces of equipment other than shields that you can safely put into the shield slot. There is one that we will do that for in a little bit. But first, we have the water dungeon boss. This is the Kraken. And this is the boss we will get for our third crystal. And then we have a little bit of stuff to do before we can actually go for the fourth and last crystal. Our strategy is still very much the same. We just hit with our swords a bunch, and then eventually this thing dies. And there we go. That's the Kraken. 3 crystals down, 1 more to go. Now, once we have the last crystal, we can immediately go into the final dungeon, which is a pretty lengthy dungeon. But, you know, from that point on, we are nearly there. So we see our third bonus dungeon unlock here. This is the Lifespring Grotto, which has the Final Fantasy V bosses, specifically Atomos, Gilgamesh, Shinryu, and Omega. For those of you, you know, familiar with the Final Fantasy lore. All right, and with that, we are going to move on to the Waterfall Cave. This is a really short dungeon, but this dungeon actually has the highest encounter rate, base encounter rate in the game. There is a like if you look at the encounter tables of any of the dungeons, this is the dungeon that starting the immediate first step already gives you quite a high chance of getting an encounter. And it stays pretty consistent. Oh, that's the 1 in 64 rare encounter, the green dragon. But yeah, it stays pretty consistent as you take more steps. So the chance of getting an encounter after 1 step or after 10 steps is not actually all that different. So it's quite common that throughout this place you see quite a lot of encounters. Quite annoying at times, but there's not that much you can do. The advantage is now that we have teleport, and this is, you know, the other reason we needed that black mage, at least I don't have to backtrack out of here, which we in an older route did have to do. And you can imagine that can be quite slow. Nightmares earlier on, I didn't want to run from them because it was too hard, but now that we have the upgraded equipment, it's actually quite consistent to run from them. I'm going to save here. This is one of the last encounters that can reasonably kill me here. These guys can ambush you, and we don't have protection against it yet. We pick up the ribbon, we talk to the robot. That gets us the warp cube, and now we're going to do probably one of my favorite bits of equipment glitching. The ribbon has a bit of a fun one. See, I need 4 ribbons. That's what we're going to equip on the shield. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the ribbon into a Gigantaxe, and then change that Gigantaxe back into a ribbon. But because we've changed it, I can now get 4 ribbons instead of 1. So that's how we turn 1 ribbon into 4 ribbons. There are actually 4 ribbons in the game, but one of them is in a bonus dungeon, and some of them are in quite awkward locations. There's one other one that's doable, which is in the Sunken Shrine. That one doesn't actually lose that much time, but all of the other ones are quite awkward to get. So it's kind of convenient that we can use the equipment glitch to change it from everything. Now, the ribbon itself actually doesn't really give much defense at all. However, it has 2 major side abilities that make it a really good item to have equipped. Number 1, it reduces elemental damage by 50%. So like fire damage, water damage, or ice damage, stuff like that. So a move like Blazara will now only do half of the damage of what it used to do. So that's really convenient for us. And then additionally, mind you, it doesn't work on every spell, like Tsunami, for example. That will still do full damage. Additionally, it grants us immunity to almost every status ailment in the game. So, for example, I can't be petrified anymore now, which is a really convenient little thing. There are some exceptions, but generally speaking, I just became a lot harder to kill for opposing enemies. Okay, one more side thing we need to do before we can actually move on. We just use the Rosetta Stone to learn Lufenian. Lufenian is a language of like this town that's all the way out there, and we can now use that to get an item that's going to get us into the final dungeons. You see, in order to get into the Flying Fortress, we need to go through the Mirage Tower and then use the Warp Cube that we picked up at Waterfall Cave just now to teleport us into the Flying Fortress. However, the Mirage Tower is locked, and we can't get in there until we talk to the people of Lufenia. Now, unfortunately, these encounters can be on the way. The Minotaur zombies are the ones I have to kill because they're unrunnable. Everything else I should be able to run from. Unfortunately, we're seeing quite a few of these guys. For the Judgment Staff specifically, at 3 encounters, the time evens out on whether it's to use the Judgment Staff or swords. On 2, it is faster generally to use swords, 1 or 2, and on 4, it's faster to use the Judgment Staff. Okay, we finally got a different encounter. So this is Lufenia, the town of... actually don't know. Like, these people, they're going to help us get to the Mirage Tower, at least. So, we get the chime. This is what's going to open the tower, and what we can use to get into now the last 2 dungeons before the final dungeon. So we are now essentially 3 dungeons away from the end. But first, we got to go back to our airship, because, you know, we need to get to the tower. Mirage Tower tends to have quite a high encounter rate. The Flying Fortress really does not. However, I will mention this. The Flying Fortress has 1 encounter that I want you to be on the lookout for. It is incredibly rare for us to see it. It is really useful if we see it, even though it's quite a scary encounter. But it is the highest experience yielding encounter in the game by quite some distance. And defeating it would essentially just give me an instant like 2 extra levels. Very convenient for a speedrun because it doesn't take that long to kill. And it might actually save me some time down the line. However, it is also the rarest encounter in the game. It is kind of considered to be like a mini-boss, but one that you usually don't even see. It's at the very top of the Flying Fortress, just before we beat, or possibly even just after we defeat the 4th crystal boss. I'll point out when we get there. First, we got to get through this floor. This floor has the vampire again, the boss that you saw earlier. The vampire is a bit of an interesting one because it does have the unrunnable flag, but only if there is exactly 1 of them. And the vampires that spawn here will always have more than 1 of them. So because of that, they are by extension always runnable. It's the only encounter that has a weird rule like that I'm aware of. There are some situations where an encounter is unrunnable if combined with another encounter, but whereas separate, they'd just be runnable. But the vampire is the only one that has that with itself. So this is a mini-boss, the Blue Dragon. Very easy little mini-boss. You just attack once and that's that. And now we get into the Flying Fortress. That was a really fast Mirage Tower. We really didn't get a lot of encounters there. So this is the dungeon with the last crystal. It's 5 floors. Most of them are really quick floors, and they tend to not have very many encounters. This is also where you can pick up the mineral that you can use to craft Excalibur. But, you know, our swords at this point are 3 times more powerful, so I don't need it. So the next floor is actually a floor that will wrap around infinitely. The way you go about it is you go 2 up and 2 left, and that will always get you to the end. So I'll go 2 up and then 2 left, and that will get me to the exit. Okay, an unfortunate ambush at the end here. Once I get into the next floor, I will heal and then save. The reason for that simply being that one very rare encounter that I was talking about could actually realistically kill me. It can happen. That's very unlucky if that happens. Other than that, we actually really do like to see the encounter because the extra experience will be quite useful on the final boss. Okay, so we're going to save here. The encounter is called Warmech. It is a really cool little encounter, but like I said, it is unfortunately very rare to see. So let's see if we get lucky today. That is not a Warmech. Okay, we've made it to the boss. We can still see it after the boss as well. There are still a few steps I need to take to get out. But this is Tiamat, the 4th crystal boss of the game, and the last boss, and usually, or oftentimes, one of the last encounters before you enter the final dungeon. He is slightly less of a pushover than the other bosses, but he's, you know, it's still not too impressive. That was the boss, and that gets us our last crystal, and thus unlocks the final dungeon. Now, the final dungeon is quite a lengthy dungeon. It will actually have a refight against all 4 of the elemental archfiends. So all the earth crystal boss, the fire crystal boss, the water crystal boss, and now the wind crystal boss. We will see all of them again, and they'll be quite a bit more powerful too. We also see the next bonus dungeon. We're going to see that getting unlocked, Whisperwind Cove, with some of the Final Fantasy VI bosses. It's also the largest of the bonus dungeons at 40 floors, with a boss at every 10th floor. They are Ultros, Typhoon, I think it's called, the one that blows you off the airship, Phantom Train, and Death Gaze. I think that's it. Okay, no Warmech today, but that means we can get to our airship, and then once we're at the airship, we can make our way to the final dungeon. I'm a little worried about my Black Mage's health. 197 is really low. We really do want it to be at least 200. The ninja, luckily, is in a slightly better position at, I think it was 250. That's a little better, at least. But the Black Mage's health really is quite low. Low enough to the point where it can actually get scary on the final boss. But we'll make do. We'll make it work. So we see one more bonus dungeon unlocked here. That's the Labyrinth of Time. It's a PSP exclusive bonus dungeon, unless it's in the Pixel Remaster, but I don't think it is. It is a much larger dungeon with a lot of different puzzles that you need to do time-based. So you lock a certain ability, and then you get some time for that, which you get in order to solve the puzzle, and then depending on how many you successfully did, you get a different type of boss. And there's like 8 different bosses. They're all called Crrool, and Crrool is able to give you some of the most powerful equipment in the game, including the Barbarian Sword that we've been using for the past hour. So what we just did, we used the 4 crystals. This was, by the way, the dungeon. You might have recognized it, maybe not, but this is the dungeon where we fought our very first boss in the game, Garland. This is where we use now the light of the 4 crystals to open up a portal 2,000 years into the past to get to where Garland is at. I think it's 2,000 years in the past. Maybe it's 2,000 in the future. Okay, this is annoying. I'm going to have to heal up a little more. There we go. There are some unrunnables. Like, most of these floors aren't that hard. Early on, they're a little scarier than they are later on in the dungeon. This floor does have our first mini-boss, which is the Death Eye. You might have seen me block with a sword earlier, by the way. That's the ribbon animation. That's why we can use the ribbon in the shield. That's actually me using a shield, but it's a ribbon instead of an actual shield. Yeah, the first few floors are the ones with a lot of the unrunnable encounters and the annoying encounters. Green dragons are one such example of an encounter that I can't run from, but at least they give pretty good experience. So that's something. So this is that boss. This guy does not actually get you any experience, but we need to beat him anyway. Now, at the very start of the game, I mentioned that we would pick up the loot and that we would use it towards, like in the very last dungeon, and it wouldn't be there for a while, but here we are. This is where we use it. We picked it up an hour and 20 minutes ago, but we do need to use it here to open up this area and give us access to the lower floors of the dungeon. So we now make our way down. We are on 3F. We need to go to B5F. That's where the final boss of the game is going to be at. As we do, Killer Chair, I'm just going to travel down, so take your time.
All right, you know what? I feel like this is the perfect time to remind people of some of the game prizes that we got going on. All three of these are of a minimum donation of 10 euros. You are eligible to win these. One of them is Here Comes Nico. It is a cozy 3D platformer for tired people. As you play Nico traveling across scenic islands, make new friends, catch fish, solve puzzles, snag bugs, and a lot more things. And your boss is a frog. So check out Here Comes Nico, and yeah, that's a pretty good one. There's also another couple ones. I don't know how much more time I have.
You can go.
All right, then another one that we have is Zoetti. It is a turn-based roguelite developed by Dusklight and published by Akupara Games. It features a deck of playing cards used to create card combos and activate skills in the heat of battle, bolster your arsenal of skills, and overcome the evil plaguing your land. Check that one out on Steam as well.
I'm still not at the next boss.
Alrighty,
you can do the last one.
Then the last game that we have in our 10 euro prizes is Streets of Rogue. It is a roguelite about player choice, freedom, and anarchic fun. Developed by Matt Dabrowski and published by tinyBuild. Rather than taking place in a dungeon, the game is set in a functioning, procedurally generated city where complex AI informs denizens of all walks of life who are just trying to get by in their daily activities. In order to progress, the player will need to accomplish specific mission goals in any way they see fit. And yeah, that's 10 euros for that one as well.
All right, so we are now coming up on the first of the refights, and honestly the scariest of the refights. We're gonna fight Lich once again, and Lich was the most annoying possible encounter at the first one. This time he is once again, because he just got access to Flare, that move that we've been using throughout this entire thing. But he didn't get to use it because he didn't get to attack, and that's our first refight. All right, so now we are going to see a boss at every single floor, finishing up with the last boss on B5. So the floors generally here aren't all that long. Some of them are a little longer than others, but it's like we're going to get into the quick little boss rush here with usually like a couple of encounters between the boss and then eventually finishing up at Chaos. Okay, this is quite an unlucky amount of encounters already. This floor has like an average of like 2 encounters. And then at the end here, we face off against Merilith, the refight of the fire boss. We are going to start using a little bit different strategies for some of these fights coming up soon. But this one, we just use attack once again. Our swords are still powerful enough to make quick work of a lot of these bosses. That was quite a lot of low rolls, which is a little unfortunate. But there we go. That's the first boss that actually survived for more than a turn. Imagine that. All right, B3 is where Kraken is at. This is also one of the last areas where we can see unrunnable encounters. There are some on the next floor, but, you know, the next floor, they're not very common. This one, they still kind of are. But I'm going to start using the gauntlets, specifically with the White Mage, because that is a faster animation and that also kills them. I wasn't entirely sure if the Black Mage one would have also killed, but here we go. That did... Okay, never mind. I am wrong about everything. Take everything I said with a grain of salt, apparently, because apparently that does not yet kill. I was under the impression that it would. Oh well, it's fine. This is where, you know, like I said, it has been quite a while since I ran this, so we'll just blame it to Rust. Anyway, we're gonna work our way down. We're going to hopefully not get too many more encounters, so I can fight the Kraken for the second time. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if the Black Mage got one extra level, because 201 is still really low. I'm genuinely a little concerned about how low my health is with the Black Mage. So maybe the unrunnables might not be all bad in the end. Like, if I get an extra level up and I get like a max extra HP, like, that could make the final boss quite a bit easier. Okay, we did get one more level up, I think. Oh, I was only... That doesn't help me. Yeah, so that wasn't particularly helpful. This is a boss that will take more than one turn to go down. This is the first one where I think it's pretty much guaranteed that it's going to take me a second turn. Like, even if my rolls are good. That being said, you know, that's the Kraken. 2 bosses left. And the floors from now on are going to be quite short. That was the longest floor we had left. So over here, there's one encounter. It is not uncommon to not have any encounters between these 2 bosses or have it just be the one. There's Tiamat. We're going to start using haste on the ninja here. So because of that, the damage output of my ninja just got doubled. And, you know, that guarantees the 2-turn. If I don't do that, it can sometimes be a 3-turn fight instead. But the double damage from haste kind of makes up for that. Yeah, time for the final boss. Time is as the boss will flash white at the end of the fight. The thing has 20,000 HP. Before we go in, though, I have a little bit more glitching to do because I'm going to equip the golden staff there. The golden staff is another MP recovering, magic boosting item specifically for healing. In this case, which makes our healing quite a bit better. So this is Chaos. Chaos has like 3 main things it can do. It can either do a physical attack, it can use a regular spell, which we have generally resistance from and are generally quite fast animations, or it can do one of his powerful spells. And those tend to take quite a bit of time. By the way, this is the very first boss of the game. Again, he sent his minions into the future or into the past, whichever it was. I don't really remember. Giant's Tonic there. Giant's Tonic there. Hilara, Haste. But yeah, to try and stop us, and that would continue the cycle of us being born. He would stop us. We would duke it out, and eventually we would lose. But we're here to break that cycle and return peace to the world. Okay, so we've boosted everybody's HP now, which puts us at a much better position. Luckily, his first attack was actually perfect. Hilara, haste him. So you can see that my ninja is doing quite a bit more damage since it's already been hasted. So this is kind of the magic pattern I like to be in. He did get a slow Ra off, so I think I might have to haste again. Yeah, I have to haste again. Gotta make sure I deal enough damage. Physical attack, that's not a problem. Okay, get ready on time, because it's going to be a little bit sudden here. We are mostly set up. I just need to do one more round of haste, and then we should be set up, and I can just hold X to win. So this is the powerful spell. These have quite lengthy animations. And we don't resist them nearly as well. But we can manage. Okay, we're now all set up for the rest of the fight. So it should just be a few turns, and then that's that. Let's heal with our mage, please. There we go. Okay. I just have to hold X to win now. That's it. This is pretty much what Final Fantasy 1 is. I hope to have at least given you a bit of a good idea We'll wait on time, and then I'll do a brief outro, and I'll give it on to the next person. I've not been counting the health, by the way. Okay, Thundaga, that's fine. One advantage of the way the equipment is that the White Mage is actually slower. So, you know, it's always the last one to do anything. Time. That's it. That's Final Fantasy 1. Like I said, very easy little speed game. The glitch, though frame perfect, takes like 2 minutes to learn. I hope you guys had fun. I'll be back tomorrow and the day after for Nubo and Poke Park. But with that all being out of the way, I just hope you guys enjoyed. This is if you want to try a Final Fantasy, this is honestly like the easiest to start on. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the event, and I'll see you guys around.
All right, thank you very much, Crrool, for that run. Delight to watch some classic Final Fantasy action. Next up, we have Rashla playing Hogwarts Legacy, so let's go get set up for that.